You're watching The Mom View, sponsored by the Herzog Foundation. When Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke recently in Germany to the Munich Security Council, he reminded those present that Europeans and Americans are part of one civilization, Western civilization. He said, quote, "We are bound together by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir," close quote. That great Western civilization is under threat by globalism, communism, and radical Islamism. Today, we'll talk about all three on The Mom View. Welcome to The Mom View. I'm Kimberly Fletcher.
And I'm Vanessa Fora.
And I'm Debbie Carlitis.
We have a big show today.
We sure do.
We are going to be talking about three threats that are facing America, and really our families, our children, our schools, all of these things are converging in our own lives. And moms don't really even understand where it's coming from. But I want to just right out the gate say, while we're talking about globalism, communism, and radical Islamism, when we say radical Islamism, we're not talking about freedom of religion. Anybody can be a practicing Muslim in the United States. That is our constitutionally protected right to religious freedom. We're talking about the militant and the political arm of Islamism, which is Sharia law. And it is infecting our whole entire country. And there is only one law in the United States. It is the Constitution. And Sharia law is completely incompatible with the Constitution of the United States and humanity itself. So while you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't want my my Catholic or my Baptist or whatever religion to be attacked, no. Totally different thing. And we want to set that straight right out the gate.
Yeah, great explanation. This isn't your typical mom show. I mean, we were just talking about this with the set. I mean, we are covering topics that are affecting literally the future of America. Globalism, another incredibly important topic for all of us. Once we start throwing that term around, what does that really mean? It sounds interesting. Oh, we're all united. We're all on this global journey together. No, we're not. That takes away the borders of America. That compromises the United States. Then we start looking at one world currency. We start looking at united healthcare. We start looking at all nations deciding what America does. Now, there's some things that we all need to work together within this big, beautiful world. But once we start globalism, we start destroying the United States of America.
Yes, the freest country in the world. And with that, I mean, we're going to be talking about a very important topic as well, communism, which is a huge threat to America and the American people, and a topic that I feel like it doesn't get explained enough. We throw the word communism and socialism out there, but we never dive into explaining what it is and how it has hurted many people across the world. I mean, countries have been destroyed, therefore families have been destroyed because of communism, and it's not a good fit for America. It never will be, and we need to do a better job in educating the public.
I completely agree. And as I said, all the three are incompatible with the Constitution of the United States and everything America was founded on. So that's why it's a really, really great topics to talk about today.
Therefore, the trifecta.
Exactly, the totalitarian trifecta. So coming up, we'll break down each element of what I'm talking about, calling the trifecta of evil: globalism, communism, radical Islamism, and explain why each is a threat to our children, our families, and Western civilization. Stay with us.
The Herzog Foundation exists to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality, Christ-centered K-12 education so that families and culture flourish. To do so, we've created comprehensive programs designed for Christian schools across the nation. One of those programs is found at readlion.com. The Lion carries news articles covering issues especially related to the education of children. These are timely, critical, must-read articles for families, educators, and leaders. Another program is the Herzog Foundation Institute, where we provide training for Christian educators led by national thought leaders in subjects such as marketing, donor development, and culture building. All training events are fully funded by the Herzog Foundation. And finally, with new Christian schools popping up all over the country, we've created a free online resource to help with the process. process. HF Schoolbox provides lessons and free mentorship to help launch groups navigate the startup process every step of the way. We're the Herzog Foundation. You can find out more at herzogfoundation.com.
There is power in being a mom because we truly care. Nobody's going to care more about your children than you, and that's what this group is about, is real women getting together to fight real battles for our country.
Moms for America is a national movement of moms reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution.
And I will tell you, I'm a journalist, but I am a mama bear. And I am a mama bear till the last breath in my body. And that's the most important thing I've ever done with my life.
Never, never underestimate the mother who's protecting her child. She will outfight fear, she will outlast danger, and she will outlove the world. And you surely do not mess with Mama Bear.
You can't push anything on our kids. We will stand up for our kids no matter what the consequences may be.
Moms for America is one of the most important organizations in saving our republic.
There are eyes, there are ears, and they're the most fierce fighters for our kids that we will ever know.
Every mission has two parts, those who give and those who do. And when we come together, we are stronger together in fulfilling that mission. An investment in Moms for America is an investment in the future. And we literally hold the future of America in our hands. I can't think of a better person to help us understand the threat of globalism than Rod Martin. Rod is the chairman of the board for the Institute for the American Future. He is also the founder and CEO of Martin Capital and the Rod Martin Report. Rod studied political and economic thought at Cambridge University in Great Britain, and he is also an award-winning civil rights scholar and someone that I follow faithfully on Substack. Rod, it is so good to have you on the show today.
Well, it's great to be here with y'all.
We're so glad to have you. This is going to be incredible discussion.
So, yeah, okay, so we have to go right out the gate of globalism because Debbie made a great point at the opening of the show. Nobody really understands what globalism is, and yesterday Vanessa said, you know, around the world people think that it's a great idea. They don't comprehend in America what globalism actually is. So we're hoping you can define that.
Well, there's an important distinction to be had here between globalization and globalism. Globalization is the intertwining of economies so that we can get better prices for working Americans, and we can specialize in the things we're best at, and there's a lot of good that comes from that. Not everything that comes from that is good. Unquestionably, we've had a slew of bad trade deals for decades that have really hurt American jobs. But in general, it's a good thing that we're able to buy things inexpensively from China or from hopefully someday Iran or, you know, all these different parts of the world, and that we're able to sell to them. That's a good thing. And by the way, one of the chief benefits of the United States Navy, which patrols the seas to make sure that free commerce is possible for everybody. Globalism is a very different thing.
Right.
Globalism is a philosophy of control by a handful of elites. And there really are only two forms of government in the world. There are free governments like that constituted by our founding fathers in the United States, where the people actually are sovereign, they actually have control over their future. And then there's aristocracy. And it really doesn't matter what you call it. It can be dukes and earls. It can be commissars in the Soviet Union. It can be the Chinese communist regime, or it can be unelected bureaucrats in unaccountable, unelected organizations in Brussels and Geneva and New York and other places that dominate our lives through rules we don't get a say in and have no control over. There is always an impulse by certain people to want to rule us, no doubt for our own good. But, you know, C.S. Lewis had something to say about that. You know, there is no tyranny worse than one that is allegedly for your good. And we have to push back against it. Globalization can be good within boundaries. Globalism is just another form of socialism.
Oh, that was a great explanation.
Yeah.
Because yes, we do have to work together in this world together, like you said, and share
Well, I have
the
one issue
positives.
with that. The whole globalization thing. I have to say, when my husband was first in the military and he was traveling around the world, he could go to Australia and get opals for next to nothing. He could go to Korea and get leather for next to nothing. Now that we're globalization, now we can get anything on the internet, and now everything is more expensive. But it's a good thing. It is a good thing. And really, the best thing about that is those things that we were buying very inexpensively, when rarity, you could go into those countries and purchase them. Now anyone around the world can purchase them, and that's elevating everybody around the world. And that's why globalization is a good thing.
Yes, within certain boundaries. You can absolutely do it in ways that are harmful to the American economy. And I want to stress that most of that was done in good faith. Most of that was not originally intended to be stupid. So, during the Cold War, we're coming out of World War II. Europe is flattened, East Asia is flattened. America by itself is 50% of the global economy. Yeah. So of course we did things that were designed to encourage economic growth in our allied countries so that they could stand back up on their feet, so that they could deploy militaries to oppose communism, so that they wouldn't fall to communism. Those things are good. And then the Cold War ended 35 years ago, and we didn't change any of these deals. So we go into this situation when Donald Trump became president again. Germany's charging us 4 times the tariff on automobiles that we're charging them. Canada's hitting us with a 280% tariff on dairy. That means they're embargoing dairy. American farmers are not selling dairy products in Canada if there's a 280% tariff, and so on and so forth. I believe in free trade. I think free trade is a good thing, but we've never had it. And the people pretending that we've had free trade are just completely out to lunch. We've got to get it in balance where it's fair. We have equal access to their markets as they have to ours. And everybody really can prosper that way.
I really think that the globalization after the Cold War is what led to the globalism being expanded in such a large level. Because when the elites, and it really is, the elites in Canada who decide we're gonna take advantage of America. The elites in Germany decide they're gonna take advantage of America. But there are people in our own country who are partnering with them to escalate this idea of globalism. And I love how you explained it. It's a handful of elites, but they're all over the world that are coming together to destroy not just our country, but every country.
Yeah, definitely not working on our interests. Can you explain a little bit more? Sorry, Debbie, I didn't mean to interrupt. Rod, about the implications and the impact that globalism has on American culture and how that's a threat to
that was
the
going to be exactly
American
my
population.
question. What are we seeing? What are those targets that they are completely focused on?
Well, a really interesting side note to the Iran hostilities is that there has been a UN push to place a global carbon tax on shipping. So we've got to control carbon. Well, first of all, I'm not sure we've got to control carbon. Carbon is plant food. Carbon makes the world greener. I don't know what they're talking about. The greenest periods in world history were when the temperatures were higher. So I don't know what they're talking about there. But regardless, if an unelected body can put a carbon tax on shipping, what that means is that they can close off-key choke points around the world from the U.S. Navy refueling and moving on through. So there's a serious defense aspect to that based on a socialist green agenda that they couldn't pass in the United States House and Senate. They couldn't actually enact into law through a democratic process. They had to do it at this globalist level where they have control without being accountable. That kind of stuff is just terrible. And we see that with woke mandates all over the world. We see that with the unaccountable spending at USAID, which fortunately Donald Trump and Marco Rubio have completely shut off. But this is an agency that was completely unaccountable, even though it's part of the U.S. government. They spent money to sterilize 300,000 Native women in South America.
Oh my God.
They spent money to overthrow governments. They had a bigger budget. You just can't believe this. A bigger budget than the CIA and the State Department put together, and they're spending it on things that nobody can account for. It turned out about 13% of that was actually hunger relief and legitimate aid to poor people around the world. The rest was a slush fund for the left. And that's what Trump has been tearing down in Washington. That's why they oppose him so much.
Yeah, good point. I guess my other questions would be, holding on to our sovereignty, holding on to our independence. I mean, like you said, President Trump is doing some great things, but how hard is this now in this day and age to hold on to our sovereignty of America?
Well, it just requires will. I mean, that's really the truth. We have been using our school system to denigrate the idea of sovereignty. The idea of a nation is some kind of terrible, naughty thing. It's equated with Nazism or something. I'm sorry, the Nazis weren't nationalists. They were German imperialists. That is not at all the same thing. The idea of a nation, or let's call it nationalism, is that discrete groups of people ought to get to rule themselves. Israel ought to be able to make its own rules for itself. Iran ought to be able to make its own rules for itself, and hopefully if there's a free Iran at some point, that will actually come together, and we'll see a tremendous breaking out of peace everywhere if that number one state sponsor of terrorism in the world suddenly became a free country ruled by its people. Right. We believe in nations because, actually, let's just take it to the U.S. level. Florida likes to have different laws than Arkansas or California, and that should be okay. And it's certainly true on the national level. I don't want Canada making rules for Florida. I don't want communist China making rules for Florida. And that's why we believe in nations. So if you want to maintain sovereignty, that's why. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is you actually have to plead the case. You have to actually explain this is a good thing, this is why it's a good thing, and this is worth defending. And that's what we're doing.
And I think about our kids, too, with globalization and, the Green Deals and the climate change and all this stuff. I remember when my son was in school, they said, what's your number one thing that you want to champion? And everybody in the class was like, climate change. I said, honey, you're going to think about something a little bit more creative than climate change, because it's a whole big world that has a lot of problems. But they have infiltrated our children with this ideology. Some advice to our moms that are watching on how to continually discuss this with our kids.
Well, the key is to continue to discuss. And honestly, I would tell anybody who can to homeschool. And if you can't homeschool, find a good Christian private school, for heaven's sake. We've got one near me, Rocky Bayou Christian School in Niceville, Florida. They've consistently had some of the top test scores in the state of Florida above all the public schools, and they're cheap. I mean, and the teachers work for nothing. I don't know how they eat. I mean, it's incredible. But we homeschooled. That was an incredible experience. And you've just got to be realistic. The public schools today have become indoctrination camps. They're not there to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. They're there to teach gender studies and woke atheology. So you've got to take this stuff seriously. But if you're in a position where you got to be in a public school, and lots of people are, and that's fine, lobby your school board. Go down there and be involved. I know you don't have time. I know you're tired when you get home from work. But the truth is, your kids are the most important thing you got. So go down there, find out what they're being taught, and rally against it. Most places have an elected school board, and most elected people are responsive to the parents who show up. They assume that if you showed up, there are probably 10,000 more people just like you who didn't show up, and they better listen. So we have seen tremendous change in school boards across the country. We even won a majority in the school board in Miami, Florida, for heaven's sake, because of the efforts of groups like Moms for America. Yeah. It is transformative, and it matters.
We only have a minute here, but I'd just like to know what would be the 2 or 3 areas that globalism is creeping in, maybe secretly, that we need to be careful of?
The biggest thing is your schools. These are, your audience is moms. Yeah. You gotta understand the schools are working against you, and they've got your kids 8 hours a day, and then they've got them for several more hours with homework, and then they've got them for extracurriculars. You can't compete. So you have got to take it seriously. You've either got to get really involved in your public school, or you've got to get control of your kids' education entirely. That's the biggest thing. Beyond that, just understand, we're in a battle. There is a battle for U.S. constitutional government that empowers citizens versus this globalist idea that, honestly, nation states are bad. We should all be ruled from some foreign capital by a foreign elite. And all I can say about that is this. That's what we threw off in the American Revolution. Yeah. The American Revolution was about us not having our rules made for us by people we didn't elect in London. And that's also true for the Indians. They threw off the people in London. And the people in Kenya threw off the people in London. I have no problem with London, but I don't want to be ruled by it.
Right.
Great.
That's exactly why we had you on the show
Yes.
today. And we're going to be
Wow.
bringing you back later in the show to talk about another element of the trifecta. But coming up, we will be addressing the threat of communism with a mom who was born in Cuba, but now is very happy to be living in the United States, as I am. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Josh Mann, Managing Editor of The Lion. The Lion is an initiative of the Herzog Foundation, and we publish articles covering a wide range of issues facing American families and culture, especially related to the education of children. In covering these topics, we also touch on aspects of parenting, family life, faith, government, and other relevant cultural topics. We publish news stories every day aiming to produce timely, critical, must-read news articles and resources for families, educators, and leaders. Read the latest in education and cultural news at readlion.com. We also offer easy-to-digest daily and weekly email newsletters. Subscribe today at readlion.com/subscribe.
There is power in being a mom because we truly care. Nobody's going to care more about your children than you. And that's what this group is about, is real women getting together to fight real battles for our country.
Moms for America is a national movement of moms reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution.
And I will tell you, I'm a journalist, but I am a mama bear. And I am a mama bear till the last breath in my body. And that's the most important thing I've ever done with my life.
Never, never underestimate the mother who's protecting her child. She will outfight fear. She will outlast danger. And she will outlove the world. And you surely do not mess with Mama Bear.
You can't push anything on our kids. We will stand up for our kids no matter what the consequences may be.
Moms for America is one of the most important organizations in saving our republic.
There are eyes, there are ears, and they're the most fierce fighters for our kids that we will ever know.
Every mission has two parts, those who give and those who do. And when we come together, we are stronger together in fulfilling that mission. An investment in Moms for America is an investment in the future. And we literally hold the future of America in our hands. Today, Gabby Blanco enjoys the blessings of freedom and liberty that America provides. Gabby was born under communism in Cuba. For those living under repressive regimes, Gabby says it's not a matter of if you'll leave, it's a matter of when. Gabby finally got her opportunity to immigrate to the United States in 2019, and now she has made it her life's mission to extol the virtues of American freedom to born and bred Americans who do not share her love for the United States. I have to say, first, welcome to the stage, but that is the saddest statement I could think of, but it is so true. There are not enough people in the United States who recognize what you do. Gabby, welcome to the Mom View.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're so glad to have you.
To have you.
So, Debbie, you had this great experience about the guy at the store. I think you should start out with that.
Well, Gabby, your story is so powerful. I mean, you're talking all around the country about socialism and communism, but I was in Walgreens and the cashier, we got in somehow this conversation about socialism, communism, and he told me he didn't think it was really that bad. Everybody's kind of worked up over nothing. And I said, have you ever lived there? Have you been there? Have you spent any time there? He said, no. I said, okay. Good. Well, there you go. I closed my case. You know, but this is what's happening, and this is what you're seeing all across the country, isn't it?
Absolutely. The younger generation of Americans believes that studying economic theory or watching a few TikTok videos or speaking to a professor whose job is just to indoctrinate kids is the same as firsthand experience living under these regimes. And that's what's happening.
Well, tell us your firsthand experience.
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Cuba. I lived there until I was 29.
Okay.
I was blessed enough to be able to come back and forth from the Cayman Islands for a few years where I was working as a waitress on a work permit. So that was a game changer for someone like me, because when you're born in a country like Cuba, your only goal is to leave. You grow up just mentally detaching yourself from your family members, your community, because you know that your only hope to have a better life and a decent future is to leave. So I was blessed enough to be able to do that. And I finally moved to the US when I was 29. And I reunited with my dad and my siblings after almost a decade without seeing them. So you can only imagine what that does to a family and what that looks like. You know, as a little girl, you have to grow up without, well, the family unit. And that's just the case for most Cubans. That's what we've suffered for almost 7 decades now. It's just family separation.
So, Gabby, your parents came into the United States before you did, and then you followed along.
Correct. My dad and my siblings and my stepmom have been here for 13 years or so. Mm-hmm.
What was the immigration situation with your parents? Were they asylum seekers?
They were not. It was family reunification through my stepmom, and then it was the same for me. So my dad sponsored me. I was not able to come with them when they originally came because I was over 21 already and considered an adult. So I was not able to come in the same immigration process. Let's say it was a separate case. So.
Therefore, it took longer, right?
Yes.
Because you did it the legal way and you had to go through all those challenging hoops to make sure you come in legally.
100%. The legal immigration process, you know, it's lengthy, but it's worth it. And it's the only way that anyone should really consider migrating anywhere, if you can. My individual process was 6 years. But then, of course, I had to wait for his process and coming here. And then he had to present a lot of evidence that he was indeed able to sponsor me and he was responsible for me for a period of time after I came here. So economically and in every way, just to prove that I was not going to be, you know,
one of the things that fascinated me, well, and I guess it would make sense, is that when Castro first took over, a lot of people, including your grandparents, were totally for everything that he was offering.
100%. So when Castro came to power, it was seen as a moment of liberation for the Cuban people. Most Cubans did support him because we did have inequality, even though Cuba was a thriving country. Cuba was the 29th economy in the world in 1959. We had, you know, we were main exporters of coffee, tobacco, sugar. A third of the sugar moving in the world trade came from our country, but we still had inequality, and our president at the time was corrupt. He canceled the elections and he was ruling by decree. So when Castro came to power, that was seen as a huge victory for the people. Of course, he lied about everything. He was very specific about not wanting to head in the socialist direction. He just spoke in vague terms, talking about equality and you know, fairness for the people, and more access to education and healthcare, even though we still had a public education and healthcare, which is conveniently overlooked today. We did have those, and it was improving, it was getting better. But he promised all those things. And of course, who doesn't like to hear that? Who doesn't want a society where kids have, you know, more access to everything and where everyone can have just a better quality of life? And of course, that's not what happened. So as soon as he took power, Cubans quickly realized that putting more power at the hands of fewer individuals, which is what they did, was a huge mistake.
And the moment they spoke up, they were imprisoned or killed.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Every business was nationalized from the get-go, not just the large industries like sugar, transport, but small companies. Now, being self-employed became illegal. The massive layoffs resulted in huge blows to the economy, and our economy quickly collapsed, even before the sanctions, because that's also something that you hear about a lot. Cuba failed because U.S. sanctions. That was not the case. By the time the embargo was fully introduced in '62, we already had 250,000 Cubans that had fled the country. We already, and that wasn't just the rich property owners. Doctors,
I'm not
teachers.
sure that people understand what nationalizing business means.
Yeah.
So pretty much the entire economy was now brought under the control of the state. So you as an individual were not able to own anything.
So they took your companies and your property
Correct.
away.
They knocked on doors. We're talking even the small. So my family had a small printing company.
Oh, okay. I was just going to ask, what was their company?
They had a small printing company, and they had another store that sold religious souvenirs and baptism cards and things of that nature. And they just knocked on your door one day, give me the keys. This no longer belongs to you.
It's unfathomable for us in America to even understand this.
And what's even more surprising is that today, 2026, there's still people in Cuba that are supportive of the current government. Why is that? I could never figure that out. And I've talked to many Cubans across the country here in America and outside of the United States, and I can never get an answer. They don't even know, because they're not there anymore. But what do you think that is? Because it's not just a small fraction of the population. It's a good chunk of people that support communism today in Cuba.
A considerable number of Cubans still support the system indeed, especially from our grandparents' generation. And it's really, once you become dependent on the state or on anyone, and you have not really been able to fend for yourself for the past 7 decades. So it's not just you, it's your entire family. You don't know anything else, and you are afraid, you are fed these lies that in capitalism, people struggle more. And if you don't have money to pay your rent, you'll be evicted. And here, at least you have a communal house that they gave to you, which is how they solved the homelessness problem.
Someone said to me the word addictive, that they create this incredible addictive dependency, even though no one is thriving in it, they create this addiction. And just to even hear you saying that you wanted to leave your homeland and everyone dreamed of coming to America, and I know Vanessa, is an immigrant as well. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think that you cannot live and dream in your own country. So thank you for using your voice and talking all across America in high schools about socialism and communism. Tell us about that.
Yes.
First of all, how do you get in? Because usually they will block you out.
Usually, well, after coming here, initially I got into public speaking through becoming a Christian, which happened back in 2021. And my husband is a part of the Gideons International. That's a Christians men's group, and they spread the word of the gospel around the globe, and they are the ones that share the little testaments in hospitals and hotels. So with them, I was blessed enough to be a testimony speaker. So just talking about what it means to be a person of faith in a country like Cuba. He's from Venezuela, so we had that sort of life story. And people had so many follow-up questions about Cuba specifically and about our political situation. So that just really got me thinking that I wanted to do more and just be involved in an organization where I could go more in depth on the actual policies and that our system has that brought us to the situation we have now. And that's how I found the Dissident Project, which I work with them. And it's a nonprofit organization that puts people like me from countries, totalitarian countries like mine, in touch with high school audiences. So basically, we go to high schools at no cost to the school, and we talk to kids, and we talk to people. We share our stories. We don't try and push anyone in one direction or another. We're not telling anyone how to think. We're just offering firsthand experiences, and hopefully they can take that and make smart decisions in the future when it comes to voting.
You're speaking truth, right? So it makes it easy. There's no need to persuade anyone. Now, based on your experience in high schools, and this is mainly for our moms, what has been, what part of your story has resonated the most to these kids? So if I was to go to, a place and find a couple of high schoolers, what would you say would be a good way, to talk to them about communism that has resonated before with the kids you talk to?
Well, I think the sharing your first-hand experience and your personal story really helps, because we don't come in trying to lecture anyone. It's not a lengthy lecture about, Marx and what that looks like. And it's just me telling my story and just answering questions. So my favorite part is always the Q&A. And kids are always curious about everything, what life looks like in Cuba, favorite foods, like food rationing, what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I've had a great experience, and I can see most of them are just really curious. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think coming at it from a place of just being genuine about your story and wanting to educate versus lecturing, I can see how that helps kids, because they're looking at these videos on TikTok, social media, telling them something, but then you have someone in front of you from these countries that are called a success, in terms of healthcare, education, all of the highlights that the Cuban system has spread across the globe as successes, and we share the truth about that and what our education system really looks like, our healthcare system, what solving the homelessness and housing crisis, how they supposedly did that, and the truth behind all the figures that they put out there that are considered a success, like literacy rate, infant mortality, and why those look high and how that happened. Once we start talking about it, it starts to make sense for them a little bit more, I think, having someone face-to-face that can talk to you about that from experience, and not from a lecturing standpoint, like you have to do this or do that or vote this way. Like, hopefully take that and do with that what you will. Hopefully, these are the voters of tomorrow. So it's very important to us. That's where the Cuban Revolution started. It started in the universities. So Castro rose to power from within the university and the student groups that supported him. So
That's why when I see these protests here in America, I'm like, hello.
That's where the battle, that's where the ideological battle happens with the younger minds. And socialists and communists know that. And, we followed in the steps of the Soviet Union, and we now, like Lenin said, give me your 4-year-olds, and in a generation I'll build a socialist state.
That's what I was going to say, right? It was the universities, but now it's gone all the way down to kindergartners. They've infiltrated their ideology, gathering this small little army now, having them rise up. That's what they've done. They've targeted the kids, the kindergartners.
The younger you get to a child, the less resistance you'll find in the end. And if you control the younger minds, you really do control what the future becomes. And our country knew that. So one of the first things Castro did was taking that education, taking the power and authority over kids from the parents and putting it on the state. So
sounds familiar, right?
Yeah, we went to boarding schools. My parents went to boarding schools, and I went to boarding schools, for 3 years. My dad went from 6 years. So basically what that looks like is you are staying somewhere. These were mandatory, by the way. They were not optional.
This mandatory?
Yes, of course. You stay somewhere Monday through Friday, basically in a separate, like far away from your home, with teachers and officials teaching you, pretty much preparing you for life, preparing you for defense. So we had military preparations since we were in elementary school. You're supposed to know how to work a rifle. You're supposed to be ready to defend your country. And then you only see your parents on the weekends. So
and you have to be very patriotic as well, right?
Very. Your education depends
your
on
country.
I hope that our moms are hearing this, because this is exactly where it goes, and this is the beginning of the roots. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today and sharing your story. After the break, we are tackling the radical threat of Islamism, or Sharia law. This is a very different form and practice of Islam, and we will discuss the difference when we come back.
It's hard work being a mom today. So it is very important to have an organization that really cares about moms.
The role of parent is the most powerful position in the world, because we've been entrusted with the souls of our future leaders. And if you're wondering how you could really wrap your mind around these principles and how you can put feet to your faith, I would definitely recommend that you find out more about, support, and get involved with Moms for America.
The Herzog Foundation exists to catalyze and accelerate the development of quality, Christ-centered K-12 education so that families and culture flourish. To do so, we've created comprehensive programs designed for Christian schools across the nation. One of those programs is found at readlion.com. The Lion carries news articles covering issues especially related to the education of children. These are timely, critical, must-read articles for families, educators, and leaders. Another program is the Herzog Foundation Institute, where we provide training for Christian educators led by national thought leaders in subjects such as marketing, donor development, and culture building. All training events are fully funded by the Herzog Foundation. And finally, with new Christian schools popping up all over the country, we've created a free online resource to help with the process. HF Schoolbox provides lessons and free mentorship to help launch groups navigate the startup process every step of the way. We're the Herzog Foundation. You can find out more at herzogfoundation.com.
There is power in being a mom because we truly care. Nobody's going to care more about your children than you. And that's what this group is about, is real women getting together to fight real battles for our country.
Moms for America is a national movement of moms reclaiming our culture for truth, family, freedom, and the Constitution.
And I will tell you, I'm a journalist, but I am a mama bear. And I am a mama bear till the last breath in my body. And that's the most important thing I've ever done with my life.
Never, never underestimate the mother who's protecting her child. She will outfight fear. She will outlast danger. And she will outlove the world. And you surely do not mess with Mama Bear.
You can't push anything on our kids. We will stand up for our kids no matter what the consequences may be.
Moms for America is one of the most important organizations in saving our republic.
There are eyes, there are ears, and they're the most fierce fighters for our kids that we will ever know.
Every mission has two parts, those who give and those who do. And when we come together, we are stronger together in fulfilling that mission. An investment in Moms for America is an investment in the future. And we literally hold the future of America in our hands. Well, I am very glad that Rod Martin is able to join us again to discuss the third threat of the Trifecta of Evil, which is radical Islamism. So, Rod, I just want to start out with this quote by a pastor that said that the Islamists boldly proclaim that we will use your laws to destroy your laws. And I see that. Do you see that?
It's as plain as day. I mean, this is the great vulnerability of a free system. It can't stamp out things the way that the totalitarians who wish to destroy it would do so if they were in power. And of course, you guys are exactly right to be covering these three things in the same show, because at a certain level, they're all the same. I mean, if you're talking about communism, if you're talking about globalism, if you're talking about Islamism, you know, these things are all totalitarian systems, just of a little bit different flavor, a little different methodology, but they all work together. That's what you see with all of these Democrats out in the streets protesting for Hamas. Hamas is evil. Hamas is one of the premier terrorist groups on the planet. It's also a bought and paid for arm of the Iranian government. There is no independence there at all. They are simply a regiment in the Iranian army. And the same is true for Hezbollah. The same is true for the Houthis. The details vary a little bit, but not all that much. So in the United States, you've got all of these people who supposedly are for freedom for women and, you know, freedom for gays and all these different things. The gays for Palestine absolutely boggle my mind. And we had a reporter go to Gaza and ask the head of Hamas what he thought about gays for Palestine, which is a really big thing in the West. And the head of Hamas said we would execute them if they got off the plane here.
Wow.
You know, these people have lost it, but to the degree that they know what they're doing, what they're really doing is subverting the American system. What you really have to do to get what any of them want is to eliminate the First Amendment, eliminate its protections, censor social media, force people into a box where if they don't conform to the political realities of the moment, they get canceled. They don't have a job. They don't have any means to support themselves. That's where they're both headed. And trust me, the minute these guys win, the minute we are subverted, they'll start killing each other.
Yep. So the Dearborn, Michigan is a perfect example. There's multiple places, Cincinnati and other places around the country. But Dearborn, Michigan is a perfect example of them using our laws to destroy our laws.
Yes.
So we have a representative republic. It is a government by the people. So they are coming over legally through various different means, green cards or whatever. And then they are very smart. They become citizens, and then they start to form a little community. And they have lots of children, and they bring their family members over, and they start building these massive communities until Dearborn, Michigan is like little Iran. And the people are fleeing. The people who are not Muslim are fleeing, or they're being terrorized, or they're being penalized by living there. So when Mamdani was elected, that was a telltale sign for America.
It absolutely is. Look, the colonization strategy is really quite effective and pernicious, and people don't always understand how to connect these dots. I promise you the people doing it have connected the dots for the last 1,400 years, so they know what they're doing. If you can get control of a city like Dearborn, you get control of its tax dollars, you get control of its police, you get control of its social services. Now, if people want fire protection, they better submit. And it's worth noting that that's actually the meaning of the word. It's submit. So you have this growing cancer metastasizing in parts of the country that's completely needless. The United States Constitution gives our Congress the power, which it has used in law, to determine who gets to come here. You know, it's not just a free-for-all. You actually have to qualify, and among the qualifications, the Supreme Court's been very clear, can be an actual belief in the principles of the country, that we should have freedom of speech, that women should have equal rights with men, that, you know, all these different things that we just assume that these people loathe. They don't believe in that. They believe in the opposite.
And there's also a requirement to have an attachment to the U.S. Constitution, even when they come here. And here we are so naive, thinking that we're hoping that they can assimilate to our country, and that's not going to happen because they're intentionally not doing that.
Well, let me just say this here. I don't think we've defined this radical ideology. I think we're talking about it, but I think it's best to your point, to really describe what it is that we're dealing with.
Well, it's important to understand that you have different flavors of Islam, just like you have different flavors of Christianity. I'm a Southern Baptist. That looks pretty different from a Catholic. So you've got all these different groups. In Indonesia, for instance, they're largely Sufi. Those guys aren't even part of the argument that we're having for the most part. In Iran, they're mostly Shiite, but you have big Shiite populations in Iraq and Saudi Arabia. In any case, you have groups of people with very different views, and the Iranian view in particular, not the population of Iran. Iranian government statistics say that of 75,000 mosques in Iran, 50,000 have closed in the last few years. Iranian government statistics say a majority of Iranians now consider themselves non-religious. There are growing Christian communities. There are growing Zoroastrian communities. But that's not the government. The government is entirely dominated by a particular sect of Shiite clerics, and I'm telling you, a sect even within the Shiites. You know, this is not the majority of Shiites. They are a particularly dangerous group. They actually do believe you're supposed to execute women if they get raped. They actually believe in things that would absolutely not be speakable on your show. And they also believe in an eschatology that says that it is their duty to bring the Messiah back. Christians believe the Messiah is coming back. They believe it's their duty to cause him to come back. They call this Messiah the Mahdi. Their sect is called Twelverism. And they believe that if they burn down the world in nuclear fire, they're going to bring back the Mahdi and institute paradise. these are not people you want to have a nuclear weapon. No. So these guys have built their proxy armies around the Middle East. Again, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. They've also been very insidious in infiltrating the United States. This is a real and present threat, not just to us, but to everybody in the Middle East. And if you look closely, you'll see there is almost no armed conflict in the Middle East that isn't directed, funded, and armed by Iran.
So tell me a little bit more about the Red-Green Alliance.
Well, that is exactly what you're seeing at Columbia University. That is exactly what you're seeing at Democrat rallies, where all of these people who, again, are ostensibly for gay rights and women's rights and all these different rights, are rallying for people who don't believe in rights. Right. You know, people who don't believe that some of us even have a right to live. And you say, this is just nonsense. How can this be? How can a bunch of feminists or gay rights activists be for Hamas? This doesn't make sense. Yes, it makes sense, because the power on earth that has power to stop both their revolutions going forward is the United States. Yeah. And if you lose freedom here, freedom's dead. That's right. Freedom is just dead, and they all know it. So they're ganging up, as it were. And that is one of the most significant threats in our domestic life right now.
That is the most dangerous that you see.
Well, and they're coming after our kids. I mean, and you guys see the story about Texas, where they were handing out hijabs and Korans at the high school, and a high schooler, one of the kids in the high school, reported it, videoed it, and showed, because I mean, they don't want it. But it's coming in such an infiltration level, and if we as moms don't understand that, how can we prepare or protect our kids against it?
It's just amazing. I mean, you've got these people who spent the last decade, you know, lauding The Handmaid's Tale. And, you know, every time...
see, anytime we go to any kind of, you know, rally for us, they're there against us in The Handmaid's Tale, yeah.
And then they're all wearing hijabs. I mean, what are they thinking? You know, this is insane. And yet it's not. It serves a very specific purpose, which is the subversion of the United States. And we saw what happened under Joe Biden's administration. I don't know that Joe Biden saw what happened under Joe Biden's administration, but the rest of us were awake. And, you know, they used every means at their disposal, governmental, NGOs, you know, private companies, didn't matter. They used the force of government to compel censorship and conformity. This is the thing that all of these liberals who say they're all about diversity always miss. Yeah, maybe racial diversity, but political conformity. And if you step over any line they draw, and they redraw the lines every week, if you step over any of those lines, you are an outsider, you are an outcast, you are the enemy. Okay, that's not America. America is about free speech, free expression, and debate.
And it's also very concerning that they're running for office. For instance, Mandani, he was a lawful permanent resident in the United States. He was an immigrant, came very young. And you can only run for office in the United States as an immigrant after your 7th year of being in the country as a lawful permanent resident. And on his 7th year of being in the country legally as a foreigner, guess what he did? He ran for office and won. He's now the mayor of the largest, I'd say, most powerful city in the country. So is that a concern that we're going to see more and more young radicals run for office?
Well, obviously, New York has a bad string of choices behind it. These are the people who gave us Chuck Schumer and AOC. So, you know, it is not shocking to me that New Yorkers would vote for somebody who is completely opposed to their interests. And yet, yes, it is concerning because, again, the problem is not that Mr. Mamdani is free to run for office. The problem isn't even that New York won't enforce its own election laws. The real problem is that they're gaining power in places where they control police, they control public services, they control tax dollars, and they don't use it in your interests. They use it to further their agenda. And this agenda is not within the healthy boundaries of American discourse. You know, the problem we're having in Texas, there are a couple of Sharia law courts.
That's what I want to ask, yeah.
You know, that I'm aware of in the Dallas area. They are imposing a separate legal system and enforcing its dictates. Okay, well, how do you have rights as an American citizen if you're subject to this Sharia court that doesn't operate on U.S. law or within the principles of the Bill of Rights and the rest of the U.S. Constitution? This parallel system eventually becomes something that threatens the legitimacy of the actual legitimate system, and at some point, that breaks out into violence. Like it has everywhere else in the world, this has been done.
I think we hear of Sharia law, and for our listeners, this is moms. This is moms with daughters. You know, and I look at that, I think, oh my gosh, it's just horrible for women. But as we talked about, this is not only horrible for women, it's horrible for everyone. Can you explain it just really quickly, Sharia law, and what that entails?
It is inexpressibly awful for women. You know, again, not necessarily in Egypt. You might be perfectly happy in Egypt. You might be perfectly happy in lots of places. But in places where they take Sharia extremely seriously and they follow it as interpreted by, in this case, the interpretations of the clerics that run Iran.
Yeah.
When you go at it that way, I'm really not kidding. They execute women for getting raped. This is real. This happens a lot.
And that's the kindest thing I want to say. That's the kindest, that's the most sensitive thing that you can say on our show.
Yes.
There's so many more horrible things that they do to women and children. We have to understand that, yes, their objective is to take down America, but how do they do that? They do it by infiltrating our communities, stealing the hearts and minds of our children, and we wake up one morning and we don't recognize our country. And that's why I felt that this show was so incredibly important. I pushed for it. Debbie wasn't so sure it was something our moms could handle, but I think,
well, I
think
I don't want to be like that. I just said, you know, this is a little bit of a heavier.
It's heavy.
How do we explain
It takes longer than 20 minutes to explain
how
it,
do we
basically.
explain this? How do we approach this subject with our moms that are just, you know, what's the best approach? That was really my point. And when she suggested you, that was it.
And you have been, I mean, I knew you were going to be the best guest ever, but you are. I think you helped explain it in a way that we could understand. And I agreed with you. Yeah. It is a heavy subject. And is it something our moms can handle? It's something they want to hear. And that's, I think that is the biggest problem, is we would just rather pretend it doesn't exist. We would rather say it's happening somewhere else. But the fact is it's in our own backyards. It's in our children's schools. It's right in our faces. And that's why I felt this show was so incredibly important. And I just want to thank you so much for coming. I'd like to have you come back lots more and talk about various different aspects of what's happening in our country. So I just want to thank all you moms for sticking with us. Again, it was a heavy subject, but there are solutions. And the biggest solution is you. You need to help, you need to understand yourself. And just like we are working so hard to do that. And then to be able to share it with your children, be an influence in your community. And Moms for America is here to help you do that. And that's one of the main reasons we did the Mom View, so that we could talk about these subjects that matter to you and help us come up with solutions to be able to counter the things that are happening. The biggest solution is you. So thank you for joining us. I want to thank the Herzog Foundation for their great partnership for sponsoring this show. And we will see you next week on the Mom View.